Picture April 2026.
$6.5 trillion evaporates in 2 days. NASDAQ in free fall. Your coworker is refreshing Robinhood every 4 minutes looking physically ill.
Your colleague, a Gen Xer born between 1965 and 1980, closes the app, puts his phone face down, and orders a sandwich.
Not rich enough to not care, not in denial, just not surprised. He's been here before. 3 times, and each time built something that right now, in this market, is worth more than any stock pick alive.
Here's what he actually does differently and why it saves him in every market crash.
The first habit looks like financial illiteracy. Gen X keeps way more cash than any advisor would recommend, not just an emergency fund, an emergency fund's emergency fund. Every financial influencer will tell you why that's wrong. Sitting in cash loses to inflation. You're leaving returns on the table. Gen X knows that. They ran the numbers. They still keep the cash. Here's why. March 2020, S&P drops 40% in a month. The people with dry powder weren't panicking. They were shopping, buying at a 40% discount while everyone else was frozen. Holding cash isn't fear. It's a loaded weapon you only use when the market breaks. And Gen X has watched it break enough times to know it always will. The second habit looks like emotional numbness. Gen X doesn't sell in crashes. Portfolio down 40%, they sit there. Don't call the broker, don't move to bonds, don't do the thing every instinct is screaming at them to do. It's 2009, 401k down 40%, house worth less than the mortgage, second round of layoffs just announced. Every instinct says pull everything out, but you don't, because you watched your parents panic in the 80s, pull out at the bottom, and spend years trying to time their way back in, missing the entire recovery, watching from the sideline while the market climbed without them. So you hold when it's down 30, when it's down 40, when your brother-in-law calls to say he already moved everything to cash. Vanguard research confirmed what Gen X already knew. Investors who stayed fully invested through 2008 came out significantly ahead of those who sold and waited to feel safe. Gen X didn't read that study, they lived it. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio found financial loss activates the same brain regions as physical pain. Sitting still while your portfolio bleeds isn't discipline, it's fighting your nervous system. Gen X doesn't find it easy, they just have more practice. The third habit looks like an identity crisis. Gen X doesn't rely on one income. Federal Reserve data shows they have higher rates of secondary income, rentals, freelance, consulting, than any other working generation. People call them entrepreneurial. That's not what's happening.
It's moonlighting, not as a side hustle trend, but as a survival system.
It's 1993. Your neighbor worked at a manufacturing plant for 18 years. Good salary, never missed a day. And then the plant announced it was moving. 18 years of loyalty. Gone in a memo. That image doesn't leave you. So the rental property isn't passive income, it's a circuit breaker. The weekend consulting isn't ambition, it's a backup generator. None of it is about getting rich, it's about making sure when one wire gets cut, the lights don't all go out. Crashes don't just hit portfolios, they hit employment. Gen X built redundancy into their income before anyone had a word for it, because they watched what happens when there isn't any. The fourth habit confuses everyone. Gen X doesn't upgrade their lifestyle when income goes up. Gets a raise, still drives the same car. Gets promoted, still brings lunch 3 days a week. Income grows, lifestyle doesn't move. They watched the 90s, people buying bigger houses, better cars, assuming salaries would keep rising and values would never fall. The math made sense. Then 2008 hit and people who had expanded their lifestyle to match their income had nowhere to cut, trapped inside a life they couldn't afford to maintain. The people who kept the gap had options. Gen X watched who survived with their dignity intact, and they remembered. The gap between what you earn and what you need to spend is the only real financial security that exists. Not portfolio value, not home equity, the gap. Everything else is math on paper until the market decides to test it. The last habit sounds paranoid. Gen X doesn't trust financial media. Edelman's Trust Barometer consistently shows Gen X has the lowest institutional trust of any generation, including towards financial experts. They'll research obsessively, but they won't hear CNBC say buy the dip and act because CNBC said so. They were told tech stocks were going to the moon in 1999. They were told home values couldn't fall in 2006. The experts were on television. The logic was airtight. Each time they trusted the headline, something expensive happened. So now they verify. They wait before they react. They watch what the loudest voices are doing versus what they're saying. Not because they're smarter than the market, because they've been lied to confidently enough times to know that volume and certainty are not the same thing as accuracy. So here's what's actually happening when your Gen X colleague sits quietly when the market drops 4,000 points in a week. He has cash ready to deploy, multiple income sources, a lifestyle that costs less than he earns, and he stopped trusting the panic merchants a long time ago. He's not calm because nothing is at stake. He's calm because he spent 30 years building a life specifically designed for this moment. These habits didn't come from books or podcasts. They came from watching the rules change over and over, from being handed a formula, work hard, stay loyal, save steadily, and watching that formula get retired before they did. Gen X didn't build crash-proof habits because they're disciplined. They built them because they ran out of other options in enough crises to know exactly how that feels. Your money habits aren't random. They're a response to the world that shaped you. Right now, the world is just catching up to what Gen X already knew.